The church continues today on the Easter Thursday in the continued instructions of the now neophytes, the newly baptized, from the ceremonies of Holy Saturday. And she teaches them a couple of lessons here, both by the epistle and then by the gospel. By the means of the epistle, where we see St. Philip being taken to meet the eunuch who is reading from the scriptures along the way, the Ethiopian, it shows that a great miracle is worked in order to save that man's soul. The preaching and the teaching of the ways of our Lord through the holy apostle there, because that man, he had no idea as to what he was reading about. Really, he had no idea what was the prophecies to be explaining, but he, in his heart, wanted to know exactly what it was that he was studying. So Philip, by miracle, is moved straight away to arrive at his side and invited to come and sit with the man and to instruct him in all of the things as to how it prophesies about our Lord. But our Lord has come, and that he has been led as a sheep to the slaughter in order to pay the price of sins and to save mankind. And with this, the eunuch, being taught, quickly believes and sees that the pathway to salvation is going to be through baptism, and proceeds to that end. It is a reminder for the neophytes that for their part, that God worked no less a miracle to save their souls, but rather that it was varying circumstances of means in order to do so. That in some way, whatever it may be, that he put circumstances in the pathway of their lives, so that they may learn about the faith, that they may become to know our Lord, and that they may eventually have come to the point of where they have received their baptism just a few days prior, and work their way towards salvation, find those gates of heaven opened to them, just as the eunuch was on the way when Philip was delivered to him miraculously. When we go towards the gospel now, it's something a bit that is sort of a contrast as to when we see it with the stationary church, because the stationary church of the Mass today is of the 12 apostles. And what is lacking from the gospel text? Well, any of the apostles whatsoever. Instead, we find Mary Magdalene as our center figure with our Lord there at the tomb. And it is the indicator of what our Lord truly treasures and rewards. We see in the person of Mary Magdalene that she, for her part, has had an extraordinarily strong and unwavering faith by comparison to all those who are around her, most notably those who are closest to our Lord in the way of the apostles. The apostles, for their part, they make no bones about trying to hide in any way, shape, or form their faults and failings that they've had along the way. And they show that time and again they have questioned our Lord. They have turned away from our Lord in his time of need, hid from him during his passion, denied him there in the way of St. Peter, all of these things, and they still are in that place of hiding. They're in the cenacle, not knowing what to do, wondering now, kind of wandering around lost and sad and confused. And by contrast, this woman who the world has viewed as a sinner, they have judged for pouring out her perfumes upon our Lord, and in the way of as a waste of money, they have looked down derisively towards as she knelt at his feet and wept and cleaned up the tears with their hair, whom they have viewed merely as a sinner, not necessarily strictly speaking the apostles in that way, but the world in general has looked as just a sinner that shouldn't even be in the place of this great man. And yet she has never wavered along that way. As our Lord says, when she is pouring out the perfumes, she is preparing me for my burial. Well, later on, she actually does help in the preparation for Christ to be buried. She sits at his feet there and weeps upon them, But later on, she stands at his feet and weeps again as he hangs upon the cross, when all of the other apostles have abandoned. And now we see her at the tomb, and Christ reveals himself to her first after his resurrection, after the Blessed Virgin Mary, as tradition tells us. She is the first one to whom he reveals himself to, because she has never wavered in that belief. And moreover, when her own brother died, she didn't question that he would rise up on the last day from the tomb. When our Lord speaks of this to her, she doesn't question that Christ is the Messiah. She just and now when our Lord has risen, she doesn't question that reality either. She's forgotten for a moment exactly what what was foretold to come of his resurrection. So when she finds the tomb empty, of course, she's surprised, and she's saddened at thinking that perhaps somebody had stolen her. She looks to the angels, and the angels ask her why she's weeping. But then all of a sudden, without her turning around, without her looking to see, she knows that somebody is there behind her. And because the angels themselves, they look up. They indicate to her by their own gaze that someone is there behind them. And she sees this sort of shift in their demeanor at the tomb. Well, she mistakenly thinks that maybe the gardener had come to see the opened door of the tomb, what was going on in there, and she questions where he has put our Lord. But it only takes a word, and everything falls into place for Mary Magdalene, because her faith is so great. All he has to do is call her by her name, and instantly she recognizes his voice. Instantly she remembers that he was going to rise from the dead. Instantly she believes it without a hesitation, and is ready to fall down at his feet again, only that he stops her, and he sends her on her way to tell the apostles, and which ultimately will be one last final contrast when we see that with St. Thomas himself, that despite the witness of the resurrection from the very lips of Mary Magdalene, he would not believe until he saw it himself. And so we see today the great faith of Mary Magdalene, and how our Lord, knowing her contrition for her sins of her past, and her unwavering faith and fidelity to him in his life and in his passion, rewards her with the early visit of his resurrection. May God bless you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost.